Hey guys, I'm really sorry that I'm gone today. I was not planning on it. I had my appointment all day yesterday and I'm not feeling well. I'm going to kind of punt and make this video here this morning, just a few minutes before you guys walk in the door. And then Miss Burnt's going to get everything set up. Today is going to involve me quickly reviewing all of our social influence stuff that we've already looked at and gone over. And then couple of you will have to watch a TED Talk, and so you'll do that in some of the hours. And then there's a little bit of partner practice that's going to happen to make sure that you guys are in good shape. And then you are going to click through a presentation in Canvas just on aggression, which is all what the plan was for today anyway. And then at the end of the hour is when you're going to take your quiz. So you're probably going to have some time in the middle there, and I would strongly encourage you to be studying, reviewing social psych, reviewing the chapter 12 and 13 abnormal psych stuff, all of those things so that you're ready for the upcoming test. So look at the board. Everything's still on track. I don't think our test is until next week, if that sounds right. I'm not really sure. I'm not looking at the board. But I think that's right. So I would just make sure that you use your time today wisely because my guess would be that you're going to have some free time to get some things done. I also handed out that summary notes review packet last week to all of the hours. Remember that big packet that I printed in color? There's a few extras in the side bins if you were gone, but that's like just a pretty good study guide, not just for the final exam, but really for every unit to review. And I'm not going to have more of those, so make sure that you hang on to it. It's the same summary notes that are printed, or I mean, that are posted on Canvas, but I just wanted to print it out for you guys. So I'd strongly encourage partner studying today. All right, with that said, I'm going to quickly review this stuff just to make sure that by clicking through it, it's hopefully fresh in your head again because the quiz will be on both of these modules, including the previous module that I'm not looking at right now. So just a reminder that we talked about conformity and strengthen conditions that strengthen conformity. We talked about compliance. We talked about obedience. We talked about the Stanford Prison Study and the Milgram Study. I would be very familiar with both of those. We did a comparison to the Abu Ghraib prison scandal. And then that brought us to our TED Talk. So when my whole presentation here is done, second hour, you're going to watch the TED Talk because you haven't watched it. Fourth hour, you're going to skip that because you did watch it. And sixth hour, I believe you have maybe 7 minutes left to finish. If I'm wrong, then don't watch it. But I'm pretty sure you didn't quite get all the way through it. I think I paused it. I'm pretty sure. From that video, for those of you that haven't, the hours that haven't watched it, just make sure that you're getting like the main points. So the stuff about obedience, but also, especially for second hour, because you haven't seen those parts early on, probably about a third of the way into the video, he talks about what happens if warriors change their appearance when they go into battle. That information is really important. And then the guy that he talks about at the end, in terms of like a more positive spin at the end, he's important and also highlighted in your book. So that's the point of watching the TED Talk. Near the end of the TED Talk, it starts to ding a lot. That's not my computer. That's his TED Talk. He was getting cut off and he just chose to not stop talking. Okay, so with that said, those hours will do that thing at the end. But I did tell the other hours that I would review the conditions that strengthen obedience. So it's all the stuff that he kind of talks really, really quickly through, and he has one slide. These are the things that you need to know. So we're usually talking about destructive obedience when we talk about this, but these are the key factors to kind of like all of evil as well as just all of things that are destructive. So de-individuation, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Proximity, that was one of the variations of the study, but proximity is just about how close the teachers were to the learners. So in some of those variations, if they were able to be separated by like glass or separated by being like in another room or something like that, they were more likely to obey all the way to the full voltage in Milgram studies. So they've learned that proximity matters. The closer that you are to the victim, like in terms of like geographical closeness, the harder it is to do terrible things to them. Presence of others who are blindly obeying, gradual escalation. So remember, starting small and building up. If you're made to feel no responsibility, so meaning in the variations of the study, If it was like, oh, this is my study, like you're just going along with it, you have no responsibility here, you're more likely to again go all the way to the 450 volts. And then the presence of an authority figure. And remember, as Milgram went through all of his variations, one of his variations was that he learned that mere symbols of authority were enough. So just a lab coat, just a badge, just a title. So we're more likely to obey people who have those things. So those are all things to be aware of, especially coming from the Milgram study, because I feel like that one's really powerful. We were going to play apples to apples today, but that's the thing we're skipping since I'm gone. So these are kind of our last set of terms. We have 5 terms left that we need to learn. So 5 or 6, I think. So I'm going to go through those relatively quickly. But de-individuation, we've already kind of talked about, but de-individuation is when you are part of a group, you tend to feel anonymous as part of that group. And as a result, you'll do things that you wouldn't do otherwise. So the best example, or the most common one that's used, is kind of like the Ku Klux Klan. So being able to take people who are just like, people that are in business, people that you'd see on the street, stuff like that, by putting on that hood and putting on that gown, they'll do and say things that they don't feel comfortable doing and saying in their real public lives. Now, obviously, the hope is that there aren't a bunch of KKK members running around. So, understanding how de-individuation works with you guys, it would be even just putting on your Verona gear and cheering as part of a crowd. You might say things to a referee or something like that, or to the other team, that you wouldn't say if it was just you in the stands and other people could hear. The next one is social facilitation. I don't know why this arrow is weird. Social facilitation just says that when people are around, it actually improves our performance on things that we're already pretty good at. So the best example of that would be any athletic event. What we know about athletic events is the reason why good teams or good players want a big crowd, especially for important games, is because when there's a big crowd around, you'll perform better. That doesn't mean that if you're kind of a crappy basketball player and there's a big crowd that magically you'll do better. But we do know that on things that you're pretty good at, having others around actually helps. The last one then on the group influence side is social loafing. And this is the reason that I hate group projects. Social loafing is just the tendency that when you're in a group, you'll actually put forth less effort than you would if you were individually accountable. So think about that. That's probably like every group project you've ever worked on. And as AP students, you might be the ones who in the end are like, screw this, I'm going to do it all because I want to get the grade and I want to do well on it. So again, had I held you as a teacher individually responsible for your work, then you'd actually put forth more effort. So those 3 terms are all kind of like group influence terms. It just means that when you're in a group, this is one of the ways that groups, just being in groups, can actually influence your behavior. The next one then is looking at how we interact as part of a group. So there are 2 terms to look at here. The first one on this slide is groupthink. And so groupthink is when you're part of a group, the desire to just like get along and, like not draw attention to yourself and stuff like that, oftentimes will make us agree to things publicly that privately we're like, this person's crazy. So anytime you're part of a group and you feel like speaking up would have more consequences than just going along with it, that's one of the factors that makes us publicly conform or publicly go along with something, even though privately we disagree. So there's lots of different examples. I think social media is an excellent example. Bullying might be a good example. Drinking can be a good example. But we also look at things in our history, like going into Iran and looking for nuclear weapons. There was a high level of agreement in President Bush's cabinet when that happened. But then all of a sudden, as the cabinet started falling apart and people started leaving their positions, they wrote these books that were like, oh my God, no, he was crazy. I can't believe he did that. I didn't agree with him. But I just went along with it anyway. And so one of the criticisms of President Bush in his first term, at the end of his first term, it was called the Bush bubble. And there was this big, I think he was like front page of a magazine or something like that. And it talked about how when people went to meetings, if they disagreed with President Bush, they all of a sudden weren't invited to the next meeting on that topic. So they learned very quickly the consequences of speaking out against what he was thinking. Now, to his credit, which is very important, in his second term, as he, cabinet members filtered in and out and he replaced his cabinet, he completely changed the way that he ran his cabinet, according to the people who were part of his second term. So important information, I guess. All right. The next term then that is also an effect of group interaction is called group polarization. This one's really interesting. You see it in politics all the time. You see it with social issues all the time. Group polarization just says that by sitting around and talking about your opinions with people who believe the same things as you, it strengthens your opinion and it gets you further away from the other side. So it's politics. It's anything with politics. We tend to talk about our opinions, talk about our stances. So if you're sitting around talking about your topics, whatever it is, things that you care about related to politics or social issues, your opinions get stronger and stronger. But that's happening on both sides or multiple sides of an issue. So what that does is it makes us further and further apart. It's the reason why it's really difficult to get anything done related to social issues, politics, anything like that that you can get kind of passionate about. So that's group polarization. So that's really it, you guys. That's all of social influence. So remember how we were breaking it down into 4 topics. We did social thinking and social influence. The next thing that we're going to be talking about is antisocial relations and then pro-social relations. So I think we only have 2 days of big topics left, I'm pretty sure, and then it's probably your test. I don't know. You'll have to look at the board. But now, as I finish up the video, I just want to talk to you about a couple more things that I need you guys to do. So the first thing is this slide, and I didn't even change this slide in my absence. This is actually what you were doing anyway. I wasn't really going to be teaching you too much about aggression. But aggression is a pretty interesting topic. What I would focus on when you click through Module 78 aggression notes on Canvas would just be the different reasons why people are aggressive. So look at what is their evidence for biological reasons for aggression and what's their evidence for psychological reasons for aggression. You'll need to know the frustration aggression hypothesis and then also know the controversy about catharsis, which is letting it out, like the belief that if you're angry and you just let it out, that it will actually decrease your anger. And even though that's a hypothesis, it's not true. So I would make sure that you click through that. That's on your own on Canvas. You can do that whenever you want. The other thing I'm going to have you working on is the little half sheet that your sub is about to hand out. With a partner, what I'd like you to do is not use notes on this. So no notes. And I just want you to be able to go through and see what examples you can come up with that aren't my examples from class. So I want you to come up with specific examples. For the first part, you're obviously trying to come up with as many conditions as you can list for each one of those. And then you're just hanging on to it. So you don't have to turn it in, but I do want to make sure that you fill it out because filling it out will give you some good specific examples that hopefully will help you remember. Remember, these terms are super important, so we need to kind of slow down and breathe and take our time with them. So for the rest of the time today, following this video, second hour, you're about to watch the TED Talk. After the TED Talk, I would do the social influence check-in with a partner. Then I would take time on your own to click through the aggression module notes that are on Canvas. And then after that, I would do some group study. About the last 20 minutes of the class period is when you're going to be doing your quiz. So just kind of keep your eye on the clock for that. Fourth hour, you're going to not be doing the TED Talk. So right after this, you're moving into the social influence check-in, that half sheet. Then you're doing the module 78 aggression notes and reviewing those on your own, making sure that you understand them. Then I would definitely participate in some group study, making sure that you're not wasting your time today because we would have been playing that apples to apples game, which essentially would have been group study. And then again, quiz, last 20 minutes. Sixth hour, kind of similar. Finish your TED Talk. I think you're a little over halfway through. Social influence partner check-in, module 78 aggression notes, and then study, and then quiz. So that's all I have for you guys. Make sure that you're staying on top of your reading. The next time I see you, we'll be having our discussion on prejudice. So thanks, and I will see you Thursday.